The late afternoon rain came down on New York like the sky was finally breaking. Cold gusts of wind tore through the streets, flipping umbrellas inside out while angry drivers laid on their horns. At the Brooklyn Farmers Market, Lena Carter was trying to shield her tiny flower stand with a worn-out plastic tarp. She was no stranger to rain, nor to long gray days with frozen fingers and dripping bouquets. But this time, fate arrived soaked to the bone, wearing a suit. He appeared suddenly at the far end of the alley, tall and determined, walking briskly. His navy Italian suit, clearly custom-tailored, clung to his lean frame, now completely drenched. The crisp white dress shirt underneath had turned a soft gray from the rain, and his Burberry silk tie hung loose around his neck. His polished black Salvatore Ferragamo shoes squelched with each step, puddles forming with every movement. He looked like a fashion editorial gone wrong, elegant, expensive, and completely defeated by the weather. "Excuse me," he panted, stepping in front of Lena's booth, rain dripping from his hair down to his chin. "I need your help, just 5 minutes." Lena frowned, still holding tight to a bouquet of lavender. Help with what? The man, early 30s maybe, took a breath, then dropped to his knees in the puddle before her. From his soaked coat, he pulled out a velvet box, now damp and wilting. "I'll pay you $500 if you pretend to be my girlfriend, just for 5 minutes. She stepped back. "Are you out of your mind? I don't even know your name." "That's exactly why it works." He looked up, pale gray eyes filled with urgency. "I'm Julian West. My family's waiting at a dinner. They believe I'm in a serious relationship. If I walk in alone, it'll be bad. And you think I, a total stranger in a market, am your best option?" "You don't have to do much," Julian pleaded. "Just stand beside me, smile a little, nod once or twice. I'll take you home right after." Lena looked at him, then at the crushed bouquet by her feet, then thought of Emily's tuition, still unpaid. $500 wasn't nothing, and there was something in his eyes that didn't feel fake. "Fine," she said softly, "but I have one condition." "Anything. If I get humiliated, I leave. No money needed." Julian stood up, smiling for the first time through the downpour. "Deal." They rushed out of the market, into the city's chaotic storm. Lena didn't yet realize those 5 minutes were about to change everything. The sleek black SUV turned onto the tree-lined streets of Upper East Side, where red brick townhouses stood beside pristine white mansions with wrought iron gates. Lena stared out the window, her heart pounding as she spotted luxury cars lining both sides of the curb. Mercedes, Teslas, even a Bentley. There was nothing small about this so-called family dinner. When the vehicle stopped in front of a 3-story Georgian clover home glowing with chandelier light from inside, Lena clutched her coat tighter as if it could hide her discomfort. "This is what you call small?" she whispered. Julian pressed his lips together, sneaking a glance at the stream of formally dressed guests walking up the stone path. "My mom tends to exaggerate." She didn't reply, just stepped out of the car in silence. As they reached the front steps, Julian gently took her hand. "Just remember, 5 minutes." The moment the door opened, Lena felt like she had stepped into another world. The foyer alone was larger than the apartment she shared with her sister. Crystal chandeliers hung from a high ceiling, polished wooden floors reflected the light like a mirror, and the air was thick with the scent of wine and expensive perfume. A woman in her early 50s approached them, dressed in a deep navy evening gown, hair pinned back in a flawless updo. "Julian, you finally made it," she said before her eyes shifted immediately to Lena. "And this must be—" "Mom, this is Lena Carter, my girlfriend." Elaine West raised an eyebrow, her gaze sweeping over Lena head to toe, unapologetically. Yet instead of disdain, she offered a polite smile. "Lovely to meet you, Lena." "You too, ma'am." Lena extended her hand, her palm ice cold. "Elaine, please," she corrected softly. Her voice was calm, measured, the kind that dissects everything without showing a single crack in the mask. Before Lena could fully breathe again, a deep male voice cut through the air. "And this must be the woman who changed Julian." Robert West, tall, broad-shouldered, his salt and pepper hair combed with precision, stepped forward. His eyes were sharp but curious. He shook Lena's hand like she was a business partner, not just his son's date. "What do you do, Lena?" he asked. "I run a flower stall in Brooklyn, sir." The room seemed to pause. A few nearby guests glanced over. Lena felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she didn't lower her voice. "I have my own booth. I pick the flowers, arrange the bouquets, do deliveries. I love what I do." Elaine stood still for a few seconds after Lena's answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the young woman in the worn coat and dark canvas shoes, but the initial scrutiny in her gaze had shifted, replaced by genuine curiosity. "You do all of it yourself?" she asked, her tone slightly softer. Lena nodded. "Yes, ma'am, from picking out the flowers early in the morning at the market to delivering them by hand. I like seeing someone smile when they receive something beautiful." Elaine tilted her head, her lips curling ever so slightly. It's rare to hear someone speak about their job with that much joy. Robert nodded as well. He'd sat through countless introductions to ideal girlfriends before, most of them polished to perfection and utterly forgettable. But Lena was different. There was nothing forced about her, no pretense, just someone who knew who she was and didn't feel the need to apologize for it. "Did you realize you just silenced an entire room?" Robert asked, half joking. Lena smiled, unfazed. "Yes, and if needed, I can give everyone a free flower arranging workshop." Lena had planned to stay just 5 minutes, but 5 minutes passed, then 10, then the entire evening. The party seemed endless. She was introduced to guests whose names sounded like they belonged on the financial pages of the New York Times. Some gave her wary glances, others offered genuine smiles when she shared stories about picking flowers in the snow or racing through traffic on Valentine's Day to make last-minute delivery. Julian stayed by her side the entire time, occasionally giving her hand a reassuring squeeze, a silent way of saying, "You're doing great." But even he couldn't hide his surprise when he noticed his parents genuinely laughing at her stories. When the night finally ended, Julian opened the car door for her and said, almost sheepishly, "Thank you for saving me tonight." Lena buckled her seatbelt, eyes still on the window. "You owe me more than a bouquet." Julian chuckled. "I know, but if I asked for a few more days, would you say yes?" She turned to look at him, half skeptical, half amused. "How many minutes this time?" "At around 2 weeks." "Who are we lying to for 2 whole weeks?" "The whole world," Julian exhaled, "until the company's charity gala. My family thinks I'm about to announce an engagement. I just can't go through with that." She paused. 2 weeks sounded ridiculous, but 2 weeks also meant she could buy Emily's new textbooks. And Julian's eyes in that moment, they didn't belong to someone playing a part. There was something fragile, honest. "Fine," she nodded slowly, "but no crossing lines. And I'm not a prop." Julian smiled, relieved, as if he'd just been rescued again. "I swear." 3 days later, Julian showed up at the Brooklyn market, holding a folder of papers and wearing a sheepish grin. "We've got some prep work to do," he announced. "Such as?" Lena tilted her head. "Dance lessons, etiquette class, and wardrobe." "You're joking." She looked at him like he'd fallen out of the sky. "Nope, there's always an opening waltz at the gala." Lena sighed. "I can dance salsa, cumbia, bachata. Waltz sounds like something from my great-grandfather's time." "Well, I think your great-grandfather would smile seeing you waltzing at the plaza." She laughed. "Aren't you afraid I'll crush your precious Italian shoes? As long as you don't step on my heart, we're good." Lena stood silent for a second before bursting into laughter. Real, full laughter. She didn't know why, but this pretend relationship was starting to feel more real than she'd expected. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. Lena, used to the scent of soil and fresh blossoms, now had to learn how to hold her posture when walking into a ballroom, memorize which glass was meant for which wine, and move to classical music she'd never heard before. Every class was a challenge. In dance lessons, she stepped on Julian's feet at least 10 times. In etiquette class, she rolled her eyes at the graceful 45-degree posture and the exhausting sequence of forks and knives. But Julian was endlessly patient, always smiling, always making things lighter. He once tried to do a European steel bow and nearly fell, sending her into fits of laughter. But what confused her more was the unexpected warmth every time he looked at her. Not the polite kind, the kind that saw her, really saw her, in a world that never belonged to her. A week later, instead of going to another upscale restaurant, Lena invited Julian over for dinner at the small apartment she shared with her sister. "If I'm learning to walk through your world," she said, "you should at least get a glimpse of mine." Third-floor walk-up had no elevator, and the stairs creaked with every step. Inside was a modest living room with family photos on the walls and potted plants at every window. The open kitchen led to a tiny dining table for three, but the smell of home-cooked food and the warm air made Julian feel like he never wanted to leave. Emily? Lena's younger sister appeared in a tomato-stained t-shirt, her eyes sharp and bright. "So, you're the famous fake boyfriend?" Julian laughed. "Only for 2 weeks, contractually speaking." They ate dinner together. Lena talked about losing their parents, about dropping out of college to take care of Emily. Emily spoke about her dream to become a pediatrician and how Lena had held their little family together all these years. When Lena washed the dishes, Julian stood beside her with a towel in hand. He looked at her like she was something delicate, and yet stronger than anything he'd ever known. "Thanks for showing me this place," he said quietly. Lena turned to him. "It's not perfect." Julian paused, his gaze lingering on the faded photographs, the chipped mugs, the scent of something warm and real. "That's exactly," he whispered, "why it feels like home." Dinner was over, the dishes were clean, and Emily had retreated to her room to study. Lena and Julian remained in the small kitchen, the soft yellow light casting a warm glow over their faces. No noise, no pretending, just two people. "Sometimes," Lena said quietly, "I thought my life would always be stuck in that market, day after day, delivering flowers, collecting payments, making sure my sister was okay. No one ever asked me what I wanted. And eventually, I stopped asking myself too." Julian said nothing. He simply looked at her, eyes softened, as if afraid speaking would break the moment. "I used to dream of opening a real flower shop," she continued, "with a cooler for fresh blooms, steady customers, a sign out front with my name on it." "Why did you give that up?" Julian asked gently. Lena smiled faintly. "Because dreams don't pay bills. But at least, they help me fall in love with what I do." Julian nodded. He could hear the sacrifice in her voice, but not a trace of bitterness. And in that moment, in the tiny kitchen, beside a tiny lavender plant on the table, Julian realized he was falling for her. Not because she was different, but because she was real in a way he couldn't look away from. Lena had no idea that while she was practicing walking in heels in her tiny living room on the 27th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, Charlotte Hayes was flipping through a stack of freshly printed color photos. Photos of the Brooklyn Flower Market, of Lena delivering bouquets, of her and Julian in dance class, of them leaving an event together. And one photo in particular, Julian kneeling in the rain in front of Lena. Charlotte narrowed her eyes. "Started as a joke," she murmured, then dialed her private investigator. "You're absolutely sure?" she asked on the phone. "It began with a fake girlfriend request?" "100%, the man replied. "Eyewitnesses at the market confirmed they'd never met before that day." Charlotte ended the call and smiled. "Perfect." 2 days later, while Lena was clearing wilted stems from her table, a pair of white high heels stopped in front of her stall. A woman in a sleek ivory pantsuit stood there, blonde hair in a flawless bun, smile razor sharp. "Charlotte Hayes," she said, unprompted, "we need to talk." Lena didn't respond, but Charlotte placed a thick envelope on the table. Inside, photos, tax documents, even Lena's business license. "Are you threatening me?" Lena asked, her voice dry. "I'm protecting what's mine," Charlotte said coldly. "Julian and I are meant to be. Our families have been planning this for years. And you?" She glanced at the flower stall. "You're a glitch in the system. Julian doesn't see it that way. He's blinded by you. But I'm not, and neither is anyone in our world." Charlotte pulled out another sheet. Your business license expired last month. Your tax filings are incomplete. I can call the city right now. You can't. I can, and I will. Unless you do the right thing, disappear from Julian's life. Tonight. Lena stared at the scattered photos. Moments that once felt beautiful now turned into evidence against her. She thought of Emily, of tuition, of their little apartment, of the dream shop, still out of reach. And if I tell Julian? Charlotte laughed, a sound void of joy. He won't believe you, and if he does, I'll make sure every society column headlines it by morning. Heir to Westwood duped by Brooklyn flower girl. Lena clenched her fists, then exhaled. You're very calculated. I'm a haze. And with the chill of a winter breeze sweeping through the damp market, Charlotte turned and walked away, leaving Lena with a shattered heart and one cruel choice. Walk away or lose everything. That entire afternoon, Lena couldn't focus on anything. The fresh flowers around her seemed to have lost their scent. Her hands trembled as she trimmed stems, and her gaze kept drifting into empty space. She felt suffocated, not by fear of Charlotte, but by the crushing weight of a choice with no right answer. She knew Julian would never condone threats, but she also knew that one phone call from Charlotte could wipe everything out. The flower stall, Emily's education, the tiny world she had fought so hard to protect. That evening, when Julian knocked on her apartment door, holding tickets to a charity concert and flashing his usual bright smile, Lena felt her heart fracture. You're here, she said, her voice so soft even she could barely hear it. Are you okay? Julian asked, concern deep in his eyes. Julian. She sat down slowly, wringing her hands. I think we should stop this. He froze. What did you say? This. The pretending. All of it. Her voice cracked. I can't keep doing it. Lena, what happened? Are you saying this because you want to or because someone made you? She bit her lip. She wanted to tell him, scream the truth. But then she saw Emily in her mind, smiling after class, arms full of medical books. She couldn't gamble her sister's future for a love that might not survive reality. I just realized we're from different worlds, she whispered. And maybe love isn't enough to survive everything. Julian looked at her, searching for something, a flicker of hope, but Lena remained silent. When he finally walked away, saying nothing more, she let herself collapse. Tears soaked her palms. Her chest tightened with a pain she couldn't breathe through. Julian didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in his luxury apartment, staring into the dark skyline through the glass, where New York City lights blinked indifferently at his pain. Lena's last words echoed endlessly in his mind. I think we should stop this. No explanation, no anger, just wounded silence and eyes that seemed to be hiding something. And that, more than anything, drove him mad. He knew Lena. She didn't quit easily. She didn't walk away from problems. If she left, there had to be a reason. And deep down, he felt it wasn't her heart that had changed, but something outside of their control. The next morning, he went to the market as he always did, but her flower stand was empty. Lena wasn't there. He stood motionless, fists clenched, one question gnawing at him. What made her give up when everything was just beginning? 1 week later, the Westwood Foundation's charity gala unfolded as scheduled. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glowed like a painting of New York's upper crust. Gowns, diamonds, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the hum of a classical quartet filled the air. All eyes were on the stage, where Julian West was moments from stepping forward to announce the big news everyone had been whispering about. He stood beside Charlotte Hayes, poised, smiling perfectly, her black gown hugging her like a promise of status. But Julian felt nothing, just emptiness. He thought of Lena, her smile while holding lavender, her sad eyes that night. And his heart ached at not knowing the real reason why she walked away. Julian, Charlotte whispered. "They're waiting." Just then, the ballroom doors swung open. A young woman in a simple dress strode briskly past rows of stunned guests, breath shallow but eyes fierce. "Emily, how did you get in here?" Charlotte hissed. "I told security I was Julian's future sister-in-law," Emily replied calmly. Technically not a lie. Julian immediately stepped down from the stage. "You're here for Lena?" Emily nodded, holding his gaze. "You need to know the truth. Lena left because she was threatened. Charlotte came to our market stall and told her if she didn't break up with you, she'd get the flower stand shut down. And if she told you she'd release photos, documents, the whole city would know it started as a lie." The entire room fell into stunned silence. All eyes turned to Charlotte, who stood frozen. "Do you deny it?" Julian asked, voice sharp and cold. Charlotte lifted her chin, trying to maintain composure. "I did what I had to protect your reputation. You'll thank me someday." "No," another voice cut in, deep, commanding. Robert West. He stepped forward, placing himself between Julian and Charlotte. "Miss Hayes, I think you should leave." "Mr. West, Now, Charlotte looked around. Every face had turned away. She took a breath and walked out, her black gown brushing the cold marble floor behind her. Julian turned to his father. "You knew?" Robert nodded slowly, "And I renewed all of Lena's permits. Just waiting for you to realize what actually matters." Julian didn't hesitate. He shrugged off the stiff tuxedo jacket, eyes set on the exit. "I have to go." "Go," Robert said, patting his shoulder. "We'll handle the gala." Emily gave a quiet smile. "Go find her." And Julian ran, heart pounding, not out of duty, but with hope that maybe it wasn't too late to begin again. Julian burst out of the Plaza Hotel, leaving behind crystal chandeliers, waltz music, and hundreds of guests still unsure of what had just happened. The New York sky seemed to understand. Rain began to fall, heavy, cold, unrelenting. But Julian didn't stop. He shed his tuxedo jacket, tossed it aside, his loosened tie clinging to the soaked collar of his shirt. Every step felt like a gasp. In his mind, scenes of Lena flashed like reels, her hands arranging flowers in cold water, her steady voice sharing her dream of owning a shop, her shattered eyes the night she said goodbye. He had let her go without a fight. He had stayed silent when she was hurting most. Not this time. Each drop of rain reminded him, if she was real, then what they had was real too. And so Julian ran, not for image, not for duty, but for the only woman who had ever made him believe in something true. Lena was organizing the last few flower bundles at her small stall when she heard hurried footsteps approaching, the splashing in puddles breaking the quiet like a warning. She looked up and stopped breathing. Julian, soaked head to toe, his shirt clinging to his chest, hair plastered to his forehead, yet his eyes, those eyes, were still the same. Confused, hurting, but determined. "Lena," he panted, "why didn't you tell me?" She turned away, hiding her red eyes. "You should go back to your gala. That's your world." "No, my world is here." Julian stepped closer. "I know about Charlotte. I know everything. You don't have to protect me. I don't need a perfect love story. I need you." Lena shook her head, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. If people find out this all started as a lie." "So what?" he cut in. "Then they'll know the truth. And the truth is, I've never felt anything more real than what I feel when I'm with you." He dropped to one knee right there in the freezing rain and pulled out a small velvet box from his coat pocket. Inside wasn't a dazzling diamond, but a simple gold ring with a tiny inscription, "For everything real." Lena stared, stunned. "What are you doing?" "I'm apologizing for not running after you sooner, for not protecting the most important thing in my life. And now I'm asking, Lena Martinez, will you spend the rest of your life with me, not as a pretend story, but but as something real. The rain kept falling. Lena looked at him, at the ring, at herself. All the fear, the threats, the voices saying she wasn't enough. They washed away in the storm, leaving only one thing: trust. She nodded, then laughed through her tears. "You're insane." Julian laughed too. "Crazy for you." She reached out her hand, and with fingers still trembling from cold and love, he slipped the ring onto her fourth finger. The moment Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, time seemed to pause. Lena looked down at her hand. Her fourth finger now held a simple band, yet it carried the weight of something far more precious. Not because of price, but because of the quiet promise etched inside. For everything real. She choked up. A year ago, she was just a flower vendor with dirt on her hands and petals in her hair. Now, in the middle of New York City, in the arms of a man she never imagined would enter her life, she felt like she was living something more beautiful than any dream. Julian didn't speak. He just looked at her, eyes brimming with emotion, unclear whether it was the rain or his feelings pouring out. He reached up, brushed the wet strands from her face, and whispered, "You're the realest thing that's ever happened to me." They held each other for a long time, in the middle of the noisy street, under the endless falling rain, as if the whole city had gone quiet to let love speak for itself. 1 week after the rainy proposal, Lena and Julian held a small wedding ceremony right in Central Park, in the heart of bustling New York, where nature and city life met in harmony. No extravagant gown, no red carpet, no endless guest list. Just family, a few close friends, wildflower bouquets, soft sunlight filtering through the trees, and simple wooden chairs arranged in a circle around a small stone platform. Lena wore a minimalist white lace dress, her hair adorned with fresh flowers, prepared that morning by herself and Julian's mother, Elaine. Julian wore a navy blue suit, simple yet elegant, eyes locked on the woman walking toward him. Sophia, Lena's younger sister, walked her down the aisle. She whispered, "I've never seen you this happy. You deserve this." Julian took Lena's hand as she reached him. Their hands were cold from the breeze, but warm from each other. Julian's father, Robert West, officiated the ceremony. His voice was deep and heartfelt. "We are gathered not to witness perfection, but to welcome something true." Lena smiled softly. Julian squeezed her hand. When it was time to exchange vows, Lena turned to Julian, her eyes glistening. "I don't promise to be perfect, but I promise to always be honest. I promise to believe in you, to stand beside you, in your strength and in your vulnerability. I promise to remember that this love began as something unexpected, but exists now because we can't imagine life without each other." Julian paused before replying, eyes full of emotion. "I promise to love you not only on the easy days, but especially when things are hard. I promise to listen, not just to your words, but to the things you don't say. I don't just choose you today. I choose you every day, from now until forever." Applause filled the air. Elaine wiped tears. Sophia couldn't stop snapping photos. They exchanged rings, 2 simple gold bands, each engraved with the other's name inside. As Julian leaned in to kiss Lena for the first time as husband and wife, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light on the moment. Central Park held its breath. And Lena understood the most beautiful things in life don't need to be loud, they just need to be true. A year after the Central Park wedding, Lena's life had entered a new chapter, peaceful yet full of purpose. Lena was now the Director of Community Development at Westwood Group, a position personally created by Mr. Robert after witnessing how she led and listened to people, even in the smallest moments. From her tiny apartment in Queens, Lena now oversaw major initiatives, connecting donors with underserved neighborhoods, launching practical education programs for at-risk youth, and helping local vendors transition into digital platforms. But what made her most proud was that every idea started from something she had lived. She never forgot where she came from. She still kept her old florist's apron hanging behind her office door, a quiet reminder of her roots. Meanwhile, Emily, the little sister Lena had once protected with everything she had, was now an intern at a major Manhattan hospital funded by the Westwood Foundation. She wore her white coat with a name tag that read, Emily Marino, intern, and every time she walked the hospital corridors, a quiet voice reminded her, my sister made the impossible possible. Now it's my turn. Lena and Emily still spent weekends together, cooking, swapping work stories, and sometimes sitting in silence, staring at Lena's engagement ring she often left on the kitchen counter. Neither of them dreamed of a glamorous life, but they both knew the most precious things, love, opportunity, family, always find those who are patient and truly sincere. On a quiet Saturday morning, just as Lena's flower shop opened, Julian walked in carrying a crate of fresh oranges. She laughed as he set the box on the wooden table, the exact spot where she once placed a basket of orange blossoms. You still remember? Lena asked. Julian nodded. How could I forget? You gave me a slice of orange and eventually, your whole life. They peeled the oranges together, sharing slice after slice, just as they always shared everything now, from joy to struggle. The room filled with the gentle sweetness of citrus, mingling with the fresh scent of morning flowers. Did you ever think, Lena asked, that one little lie could lead to a real marriage? Julian gently squeezed her hand. It wasn't a lie. It was bravery. We were both brave that rainy night. Outside, a soft rain began to fall, tapping against the market roof. Julian and Lena stepped out under the awning, standing together hand in hand. Neither spoke. They simply watched the rain fall, as if time had folded back into that very first night. Their eyes met. No vows needed, just the quiet certainty in their clasped hands. Enough to know they would walk forward, together, far beyond what that first rainy evening had ever dared to imagine.